Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Brett Davis. Joining me today is the Center Square's Eastern Washington reporter, Timothy Schumann. You recently authored a piece headlined, "After Millions Spent, Spokane County Frustrated to See Homeless Numbers Increase." So a recent strategic planning meeting of the Spokane County Commissioners saw a lot of frustration expressed. Can you tell us how much money has been spent and how has the homeless problem gotten worse in their estimation?
Part of the problem is in the region, they're not 100% sure how much money has been spent.
That's a bit of a problem, I would think.
Yeah. If you look at just the city of Spokane, and not all of this has been spent on homelessness, but somewhere between $25 and $35 million have been spent in the last 3 years. Most recently, they were spending over six figures a month on a homeless shelter that they didn't even own. It was just a lease, and they were making improvements to this building that they didn't even own. And the Spokane County Commissioners, during their meeting to set up a regional homeless authority, essentially got bogged down in arguments about the details of, even if we do this, what's going to get better? How are we going to improve things? Because they've been spending millions and millions, sometimes a month, and it's not improving.
I guess that's not all bad news necessarily. I don't know if any of this money was spent on closing Camp Hope earlier this year. Did any of that money go to that?
Some of it did, yes. But largely the state provided $24 million alone for that.
So that was mostly a state venture there.
Yeah, but I mean, that's still, falls under the purview of what they were talking about. But at one point, one of the county commissioners, Al French, joked about busing people to Kootenai County in Idaho because the comparison came up between Tacoma's homeless numbers, which have been decreasing, and Spokane's homeless numbers, which have been increasing. And it, while a joke from the commissioner, it kind of brought up the topic of geography and demographics and how Tacoma has the luxury of being in the, greater Seattle metro area, and Seattle has more services. And so people tend to flow out of Tacoma and into the Seattle region.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. You mentioned in the story, one commissioner, maybe it's the one you're talking about, described Spokane County as a receiving entity and Tacoma as a sending entity. Can you explain what that means? Yeah.
The discussion after, Commissioner French made that, admittedly joke, was turned to one of geography, and basically everyone in the meeting agreed that Spokane's region that they, provide services for is essentially the 9 counties around Spokane, even the ones in Idaho. And so what you tend to see is people gravitate towards where there are services to help them deal with their problems. And that leads to an influx of people moving to Spokane.
I see. So now, did the commissioners come to any conclusions or decisions at this meeting, or was it just a discussion?
There was a lot of frustration. There wasn't any conclusions or decisions. This is a preliminary meeting to set up a regional homeless authority that was under the housing and urban development, the federal housing and urban development rules, who is providing a lot of this funding. This regional homeless authority needs to be established. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was supposed to be established something like 3 months ago.
So a little behind, are they?
Yeah, but no one in the region was stepping up and doing it. And so now kind of Spokane County, in conjunction with the city of Spokane, are not unilaterally, but they are saying, hey, no one else is doing this. We're going to do it. And if you want to be a part of it, you can join. But the frustration from the county commissioners was, if we're diverting this money from things that could help people in other ways, we have a responsibility as elected officials to spend these taxpayer funds like responsibly, equitably, reasonably between everyone in the region. And if we're pulling money that would otherwise go to low-income housing assistance or assistance for mental health in other capacities, and we're allocating it to this homeless authority, and we have no oversight of it, what does that say of us as elected officials? And so there was a lot of talk about boundaries and where people's roles start and end, and I could feel the frustration in the meeting because they were essentially being given an impossible task, saying, ultimately you have responsibility for this, spending these funds, but you're also supposed to establish this authority to spend the funds that in its current form sounds like they might not have much say or control over. And so they were pushing back against it.
Well, I'll be curious to see how this plays out in the future. Hopefully they get a handle on things. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Timothy Schumann, this is Brett Davis. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.